Asia, good evening America. You're watching World DNA with me, Raisha Sehgal.
And I'm Himkar Sura, and on the show today, the United States of America has announced criminal charges against 6 top Hamas leaders over the October 7th attack on Israel. Meanwhile, the White House has said that Israel has agreed to withdraw from parts of the Philadelphia corridor, further stressing that it is time for a ceasefire deal. We'll explore that on the show today.
Also on World DNA, we shift our focus to Nigeria, where at least 80 people have been killed and scores are missing after an attack by Boko Haram militants in Nigeria's northeastern Yobe state. We'll get you more on that, but first a quick check on the headlines.
U.S. Justice Department announces criminal charges against Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and 5 other leaders of the terror group in connection with the October 7th attack against Israel.
The White House says its latest Gaza ceasefire proposal, backed by Israel, includes IDF withdrawal from parts of Philadelphia corridor. This comes days after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that Israel must retain its deployment in the stretch.
I believe.
Kyiv says a Russian missile attack on the central Ukrainian city of Poltava kills 51 people, one of the deadliest strikes of Moscow's 2.5-year invasion.
At least 81 people killed and several missing in Nigeria after an attack by suspected Boko Haram militants in northeastern Yobe state.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump to plead not guilty to criminal charges of attempting to overturn his 2020 election defeat in response to a revised indictment in the case.
At least 12 migrants die off the northern French coast trying to cross the Channel to England. Deadliest such disaster this year.
Christmas to come early in Venezuela as President Maduro declares celebrations to kick off early this year in October. This is Brazil and the United States condemn arrest warrant for main opposition leader.
AI heavyweight Nvidia loses $279 billion in market value on Tuesday. This marks the deepest ever single-day decline for U.S. company. Investors soften their AI optimism in a broad market sell-off following economic data.
Second seed Arena Sabalenka sails past Olympic champion Qin Yuanzhen at the U.S. Open. The Belarusian is now...
And a top focus in World DNA. Massive demonstrations continue for the third consecutive night in Israel's Tel Aviv.
Of course, with demonstrators clashing with the police, demanding Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to secure a ceasefire and hostage release deal following the recovery of 6 dead hostages from Gaza.
Demonstrators in large numbers took to the streets yet again after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu dismissed making any concessions in stalled talks towards a hostage release deal. Many Israelis blame Netanyahu for the mounting number of dead hostages and are calling for a ceasefire agreement to free the remaining hostages.
At least 500,000 people took to the streets in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv on Sunday after the discovery of 6 deceased captives in Gaza over the weekend, who authorities reported were killed within 48 to 72 hours prior to their recovery. Protests erupted in Tel Aviv, leading to a general strike initiated by the country's largest trade union on Monday.
On the other hand, the United States has called for urgency and flexibility to finalize an agreement between Israel and Hamas for a truce in Gaza.
State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that the United States will work over the coming days with mediators Egypt and Qatar to push for a final agreement.
But there are dozens of hostages still remaining in Gaza, still waiting for a deal that will bring them home. It is time to finalize that deal. The people of Israel cannot afford to wait any longer. The Palestinian people, who are also suffering the terrible effects of this war, cannot afford to wait any longer. The world cannot afford to wait any longer.
He also said that the bridging proposal that the US is putting forward and what the Israeli government also has agreed to, it includes the removal of the Israeli Defense Forces from the densely populated areas, including the Philadelphia corridor.
Meanwhile, Netanyahu's political rival Benny Gantz has criticized his stance on the Philadelphia corridor, saying that Israel does not need to keep troops in the southern Gazan border area for security reasons and should not be used as a reason to prevent a deal to bring back the remaining hostages from the Gaza Strip. He said Israel's main existential threat is Iran and not the Philadelphia corridor.
The issue of the Philadelphia corridor has been a major sticking point in efforts to secure a deal to halt the fighting in Gaza and return the remaining 101 Israeli hostages held by Hamas.
Benny Gantz accused Netanyahu of putting his own interests before Israel's.
The Prime Minister did not look the public in the eye and tell the truth, that he won't bring the hostages alive. He won't truly protect the southern corridor of Gaza, that he will not return the residents of the north to their homes, that he won't prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon.
Furthermore, the United States has announced criminal charges against top leaders of Hamas over their role in the October 7th deadly attack on Israel. Militant group's chief Yahya Sinwar, along with at least 5 others, have been accused of orchestrating the October 7th attack, which killed 1,200 people, including more than 40 Americans. The attack triggered an Israeli assault on Gaza that has killed more than 40,800 Palestinians.
Out of the 6 accused, Sinwar is believed to be in hiding in Gaza, while Khalid Mishal, who heads the group's diaspora office, is based in Doha. And Ali Baraka, a senior Hamas official, is based in Lebanon. 3 others, Ismail Haniyeh, Mohammed Deif and Marwan Isa, they all have been killed.
The White House said that Hamas has even more American blood on its hands and will pay for the deaths of 6 hostages. And President Joe Biden is working round the clock with his team to get a ceasefire deal through.
Make no mistake about it, Hamas leaders are going to pay for these crimes. And he and his team, for sure, will keep working around the clock to get this hostage deal done. And this is a president that has been pretty clear about that. He's spoken about making sure that we get this hostage deal done. He's met with the hostage families.
All right, for more on this, we're now being joined by Colonel David Biederosh from Washington, D.C. He's West Asia analyst and an associate professor at Near East South Asia Center for Security Studies. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA this morning, sir. Of course, you know that the United States has leveled charges on 6 top Hamas leaders. That being said, how do you assess the implications of these charges that have been leveled? Do you think this is going to have any sort of a bearing in what's happening on ground? Because we've seen that there is growing anger and pressure, even though the pressure has been mounting on Israeli Prime Minister for quite some time now. he remains defiant. How do you assess this? All right, I believe there is some technical issue that we're facing right now. We will get Colonel David Bedros back online with us. Just to let our viewers know that massive protests are continuing for a third consecutive night in Israel's Tel Aviv, with demonstrators clashing with the police, demanding that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu secure a deal for the release of all the remaining hostages. And this anger and outrage, wave of anger and outrage, comes following the recovery of 6 dead hostages from Gaza.
Apart from that, the Philadelphia corridor, which has in the past few weeks been a point of contention between Israel and Hamas militants for a ceasefire deal. And now in the latest, the White House has announced that Israel has agreed to withdraw from parts of Philadelphia corridor. And the withdrawal of troops was to take place in the second phase of the hostage deal. And Mossad chief David Barnea said that Israel is now willing to exit the Philadelphia corridor. Of course, the question remains, how will this impact the ongoing ceasefire hostage talks? Because in the past, we've seen that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been adamant on the deployment of the Israeli troops at the Philadelphia corridor.
The United States, of course, has called for urgency and flexibility to finalize the agreement between Israel and Hamas for a truce deal. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that the United States will work over the coming days with mediators Egypt and Qatar to push for a final agreement. All right. We now have Colonel David Bedros back online with us. Sir, I hope you can hear me now.
I hear you perfectly. I'm sorry for the problem.
Oh, absolutely, sir. Sir, would you like me to repeat my question?
Please.
Sir, I was asking you about the implications of the charges that have been leveled by the United States on the top Hamas leaders. Do you think this will have any sort of a bearing on what's happening on ground? Because we've seen that even though the pressure has been mounting on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for quite some time now, Israel and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in fact, remains defiant.
Yeah, I don't think that the specific level of charges against the Hamas leaders will have any effect. As you noted, 3 of the 6 have already been killed, and then 1 is in hiding in Gaza and is in grave jeopardy of dying. There's a great possibility that the one hiding in Lebanon will probably be targeted by Israel at some point. Only Khaled Michel in Qatar seems to be not in fear of his life at the moment. So the possibility of being prosecuted by U.S. court is it's significant to you and I, but I think it's a little bit down the priority list for these people.
Colonel Roches, I also want to touch upon the point of contention, which is the Philadelphia corridor. And now the White House has said that Israel has agreed to move away from some parts of this very important corridor. Talk to us about how that will impact the ceasefire talks, because according to reports, Mossad chief David Barnea announced and rather told the negotiators about the announcement of Israeli troops withdrawing from the corridor before Netanyahu was about to give a press conference where he would clearly deny that the Israeli troops would leave the Philadelphia corridor.
Yeah, there's a lot of confusion here, and I think it's unclear as to what the Israeli government's position actually is. And it's quite possible that the White House may have gotten out ahead of Netanyahu. I think that the news reports are that Israel has said it's willing to leave the corridor as part of a ceasefire deal that would include the release of the hostages. That's interesting, but I think it's not really likely to happen in the short term, because Hamas knows when it releases the hostages, Israel will destroy them once and for all. The hostages are what's keeping Hamas's leadership alive within the Gaza Strip. So there's a little bit of confusion. Another complicating point that your report didn't bring out is that there's an issue with Egypt under the Camp David Accords that returned the Sinai to Egypt. Israel is very limited in the amount of forces it can have within 1 kilometer of the Egyptian border. So right now they're technically in violation of the Camp David Accords with Egypt. So there's a lot of issues here, and I think that there's probably a little bit of confusion. I suspect that Netanyahu will deny that this deal has been made, and I think that Barnea and the other leaders will say, yes, we can do this as part of a peace agreement, but again, or a ceasefire agreement, but again, that has floundered over and over again on the hostage release issue.
Right, Colonel Roches, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA with your insights.
Thank you.
All right, now focusing on the war in Ukraine, at least 51 civilians have died and over 270 wounded as Russian forces launched 2 ballistic missiles in the Ukrainian city of Poltava.
The attack is one of the deadliest strikes of the 2.5-year war. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, a building in Poltava caught fire, trapping and injuring several people. The interval between the air raid siren and the arrival of the deadly missiles was so short that it caught civilians during a frantic evacuation to the bomb shelter. Several people remain trapped under the rubble while rescuers and medics continue searching for the survivors.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in a statement condemned the brutal attack, saying that the Russian missiles hit an educational institution and a neighboring medical facility. It also partially destroyed the building of the Military Institute of Communications. He said he definitely holds Russia accountable for the strike. Zelensky reiterated demands for more Western air defenses and long-range weapons to target Russia deep into its territory, adding that more delays mean more loss of life. Civilian lives. Zelensky announced that the launch of an operation and investigation into the attack is underway.
First of all, the tragedy in Poltava. Rescue operations are still underway to clear the rubble. All services are involved. As of now, the number of injured is 271. Everyone is being provided with necessary assistance, and I am grateful to all the rescuers, doctors, nurses, and all the Poltava residents who have joined in, donated blood, and supported us. We know that there are people under the rubble of the destroyed building.
On the other hand, Russian forces claim that their targeted facility was used to train military specialists from the Ukrainian army in radar and electronic warfare systems.
The Russian Defense Ministry also released images purporting to show its aircraft crew destroying a concentration of Ukrainian manpower and armored vehicles in the border area of the Kursk region.
The head of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and discussed the safety of the Kursk nuclear power plant. Grossi is also expected to visit the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southern Ukraine, which Russia captured shortly after invading its neighbor in 2022.
Meanwhile, 4 Ukrainian ministers stood down in a major government shake-up at a critical juncture in the war with Russia. The resignations of these ministers leaves over a third of the cabinet vacant after sackings earlier this year. Zelensky could move to fill the positions before he travels this month, to the United States, where he hopes to present a victory plan to the US President Joe Biden. And following Mongolia's refusal to comply with the ICC ruling on the arrest of Russian President Vladimir Putin, small protests were staged in the capital.
Demonstrators gathered at the central square and unfurled the Ukrainian flag, demanding that the authorities detain the Russian president for the war crimes committed in Ukraine. They also held the anti-Putin demonstrations but were removed by the police. Now, despite an international arrest warrant against the Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Putin paid a rare visit to the ICC member Mongolia, where he was given a red carpet welcome and a guard of honor. He was accompanied by the Mongolian president. The two leaders paid tribute to Genghis Khan's statue before heading to the private meetings. This was the first such visit by the Russian president in 5 years to an ICC member country since an arrest warrant against him 18 months ago.
Ahead of the visit, Ukraine asked Mongolia to hand over Putin to the court in The Hague, which Mongolia declined. Ukraine condemned the move, saying that it was the heaviest blow to the international criminal law system. Mongolia's inaction also attracted the anger of the European Union that slammed Mongolia for not executing the international warrant. Now, Putin's visit was also boycotted by the former mayor of Mongolia. Here's what he had to say.
I am interested in hearing what the Mongolian president has to say. Putin is visiting Mongolia on his invitation. What's the reason behind inviting Putin? I have heard rumors that our president invited Putin to persuade him to stop the war. I hope this is true, and I am waiting for the joint statement.
The official visit that concluded yesterday witnessed the two nations elevating their bilateral relations. Mongolia said that they've committed to further expanding and developing a cooperation with neighboring Russia within the framework of an independent, open and multipolar foreign policy that values peace.
Well, a former aide to New York Governor Kathy Hochul has been charged for secretly acting as an agent of the Chinese government.
Now, the aide, Linda's son, and her husband, Chris Hu, have been accused of availing millions of dollars and luxury items in exchange of blocking Taiwanese representatives from meeting high-ranking officials. Take a look.
Linda's son, a former aide to New York Governor Kathy Hochul, left a New York City courthouse on Tuesday after she was charged with secretly acting as an agent of the Chinese government in exchange for millions of dollars in compensation and gifts. Both son and her husband, Chris Hu, were arrested Tuesday morning. Each pleaded not guilty to the criminal charges. Gerard Schaefer is a lawyer for Son.
Charges are disappointing, that they are the product of an overly aggressive investigation.
Excuse me.
And we are looking forward to exercising our right to a speedy trial and addressing these accusations in the forum where it's most appropriate, which is a court of law.
Federal prosecutors in Brooklyn said that while working in state government, Son blocked representatives of the Taiwanese government from meeting with officials and sought to arrange for a high-level New York state official to visit China. In exchange, Chinese government representatives allegedly arranged for millions of dollars in transactions for Son's husband, who had business activities in China. Prosecutors said the couple used money to buy a 2024 Ferrari Roma sports car, as well as property on New York's Long Island and in Honolulu worth about $6 million. Governor Hochul was not accused of any wrongdoing. A spokesperson for Hochul said her office fired Son in March 2023 after discovering evidence of misconduct, reported Son's actions immediately to authorities, and has assisted law enforcement throughout the process. The judge ordered Son released on $1.5 million bond and Chris Hu on $500,000 bond.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report. Listen to this.
Linda's son, a former aide to New York Governors Kathy Hochul and Andrew Cuomo, was charged with acting as an illegal agent for the Chinese Communist Party. She allegedly used her state position to advance Beijing's agenda in exchange for financial benefits worth millions of dollars. Son and her husband, Chris Hu, were arrested and charged with various crimes, including violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit bank fraud. According to the indictment, Son blocked Taiwanese government representatives from having access to the governor's office when she worked there, and also shaped New York's governmental messaging to align with Chinese priorities in politics, and received financial benefits and gifts in return. The couple's assets, including their $4 million home and luxury cars, were allegedly purchased with illicit funds. A son pleaded not guilty and was released on bond. The case is part of a broader Justice Department effort to root out secret agents for the Chinese government operating here in the United States. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Moving on, at least 81 people have been killed and several are still missing in Nigeria.
This after Boko Haram militants raided and attacked a village in what appears to be an act of revenge.
Well, the attack happened on Sunday when a band of about 150 Boko Haram militants attacked the Mafa village in northeastern Nigeria. The attackers came on more than 50 motorcycles with rifles and rocket-propelled grenades. According to reports, the militants carried out the attack in retaliation to the deaths of 2 of their members killed by vigilantes from the same village.
Reports suggest that many shops and houses were set on fire. Out of the at least 81 victims, 34 were buried in mass funeral in the outskirts of the Mafa village.
We are here to attend the funeral prayers of our people from Mafa village who were massacred by the Boko Haram the day before yesterday. And we have prayed for 34 souls.
Nigeria has witnessed the killing of over 40,000 people by Boko Haram and other terror outfits in the last decade. According to experts, several militant groups like Boko Haram have formed an alliance with criminal gangs and bandits to raid villages, kill and kidnap the residents.
And Christmas is coming early this year in Venezuela as ordered by President Nicolas Maduro.
The Venezuelan president has announced that this year's Christmas holidays will begin in October itself.
Now, Maduro made the announcement during his television show. The announcement comes after a month of political unrest in the country, after the highly disputed presidential election that sparked protests throughout the country that left thousands of people detained. Maduro's decree would mean a festive Christmas climate would start in the midst of the country's political tensions.
In homage to you, in gratitude to you, I am going to decree an early Christmas for October 1. Christmas begins on October 1st for everyone. Christmas has arrived with peace, happiness and security.
Last year, Maduro decreed the beginning of Christmas for November 1st and this year decided to push it 1 month forward.
Meanwhile, Brazil and the United States have condemned the arrest warrant for Venezuelan opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez. On Monday, a Venezuelan judge issued an arrest warrant for Gonzalez, whose opposition's presidential candidate. The warrant is part of a criminal investigation into the results of the highly anticipated July election that both the ruling party and its opponents claim to have won. Maduro was proclaimed winner of the elections by the ruling party, Loyal Electoral Council, which provided no detail of the results or further proof of the win.
And it's now time for a quick short break.
Don't go anywhere, lots lined up for you on the other side as well. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a 2-day official visit to Brunei on the invitation of the Crown Prince. We'll get you all the details of that on the show.
This week on World of Africa, Chinese lenders approve $4 billion in loans to Africa in 2023, the first annual increase since 2016. Crime statistics in South Africa reveal alarming numbers. Over 6,000 people murdered between April and June this year, most of them women and children. And Morocco embraces eco-tourism by offering visitors more sustainable experiences. All this and more this week on World of Africa at these times.
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. Lots lined up for you on this side of the show. Let's get started with the headlines first.
U.S. Justice Department announces criminal charges against Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and 5 other leaders of the terror group in connection with its October 7th attack against Israel.
The White House says its latest Gaza ceasefire proposal, backed by Israel, includes IDF withdrawal from parts of the Philadelphia corridor. This comes days after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that Israel must indefinitely retain presence in the stretch.
Kiev says a Russian missile attack on the central Ukrainian city of Poltava kills 51 people, one of the deadliest strikes of Moscow's 2.5-year invasion.
At least 81 people killed, several missing in Nigeria after an attack by suspected Boko Haram militants in northeastern Yobe state.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump to plead not guilty to criminal charges of attempting to overturn his 2020 election defeat in response to a revised indictment in the case.
At least 12 migrants die off the northern French coast trying to cross the Channel to England, deadliest such disaster this year.
Christmas to come early in Venezuela as President Maduro declares celebrations to kick off early this year in October. This as Brazil and the U.S. condemn arrest warrant for the main opposition leader.
U.S. gasoline falls nearly 6% to its lowest since December 2021. The end of the summer driving season weighed on demand for the motor fuel amid a sell-off in the broader oil market.
Second seed Aryna Sabalenka sails past Olympic champion Qinwen Zheng at the U.S. Open.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a 2-day official visit to Brunei.
And this on the invitation of Crown Prince Sultan. The Indian diaspora welcomed Prime Minister Modi in Brunei's capital. Prime Minister Modi also visited the iconic Omar Ali Saifuddin Mosque in Brunei on the first day of his visit.
He has inaugurated the new chancery premises of the High Commission of India in the diplomatic enclave. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval and Foreign Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar were also present during the launch.
Prime Minister Modi is set to engage in bilateral discussions today in areas pertaining to defence, trade and investment, energy, health and other sectors. Well, earlier last month, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met with Foreign Minister of Brunei. The meeting was held on the sidelines of the ASEAN meeting in Laos. while a logo was launched celebrating 40 years of diplomatic ties between both the countries.
Now, this is the first ever bilateral visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Southeast Asian nation after 2013, when then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh visited the country to participate in the 11th ASEAN Summit. Prime Minister Modi will travel to Singapore in the second leg of the trip, where he will meet Singaporean Prime Minister.
Well, Chinese President Xi Jinping will welcome African leaders to Beijing this week.
And this comes at a time when the budget is reduced and a better idea of what China wants in return: greater profits and fewer problems.
China exerted influence by building hydropower projects, highways and rail connections throughout the continent. It took almost a decade and over $120 billion in government-backed loans from China's Belt and Road Initiative. This effort extended by maintaining these ties. Beijing was able to channel its pent-up industrial potential and also secure access to mineral and energy.
However, suspicions of debt traps, exploitation, corruption accompanied with infrastructure and diplomacy, these claims were further strengthened when 3 African nations failed, leading to extensive restructuring in recent years. An incomplete $3.8 billion railway in Kenya, which terminates in a desolate grassland, seems to personify the broken promise of the BRI.
Even with all these issues, the fact that a slew of African heads of state are making their way to Beijing for the 9th Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, which begins today, proves that China is still the most powerful economic force for the African continent. Presidents Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria, Paul Kagame of Rwanda and Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, they're all set to attend the summit.
This is the largest diplomatic event Xi is holding this year and the first summit of its kind in Beijing since 2018. The current twist is that Xi is redirecting the country's attention to less transparent public-private partnerships. This in the hope that they can provide better results while avoiding greater responsibility in the event of failure. China became the largest bilateral creditor to Africa in 2016, with loans ranging from $98.7 million in 2000 to a peak of $28.8 billion. Those numbers fell in the early years that followed until after the pandemic and then rose again to $4.6 billion last year. Countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia and Qatar filled some of the void left by China's reduced loans in recent years. Now, the dollar experienced a significant downturn in August, marking its largest monthly drop of the year, and this decline has provided much-needed relief to economies that have been grappling with the strength of the U.S. currency.
Well, the weakening dollar is primarily driven by expectations that the Federal Reserve will cut rates in the month of September. Well, one of the most notable impacts of the dollar's decline has been on the Japanese yen. In July, the yen reached a 38-year low against the dollar, prompting speculation of Japanese government intervention to prop up the currency. However, the yen's dramatic rebound has put an end to such intervention talks. The yen's appreciation can be attributed to several factors. This includes a rate hike by the Bank of Japan or the anticipation of Fed rate cuts, and lastly, a reversal of popular carry trades.
The weaker dollar, it has also provided a much-needed boost to emerging market currencies, particularly in Asia. The Philippines peso and Indonesian rupiah have recorded their best monthly gains in years, thanks to the decline in the dollar, while Latin American currencies have faced challenges due to domestic issues and fluctuating commodity prices.
A softer dollar has offered some breathing space for emerging markets. This weakening dollar has allowed emerging market central banks to cut their rates and focus on domestic growth issues. The Philippines, Singapore, South Africa, South Korea, Taiwan, they all are expected to join other countries in Latin America and Central and Eastern Europe in easing monetary policy.
In Europe, the British pound and euro have seen significant gains, outperforming the dollar. This strength is likely to provide comfort to the Bank of England and European Central Bank as they consider easing monetary policy while navigating sticky inflation. Meanwhile, Sweden's crown emerged as the top-performing major currency in August, appreciating by 4% and easing the country's inflation battle. As global economies adjust, the dollar's decline is reshaping currency dynamics worldwide.
Let's now take a look at all the news from the world of technology. Well, India is installing advanced warning systems at nearly 200 Himalayan glacial lakes that are at risk of overflowing. With over 7,500 glacial lakes in the region, many of them pose a serious threat of flash floods. The National Disaster Management Authority is broadly focusing on 190 lakes that are considered the most dangerous, aiming to complete the project within a span of 3 years. These lakes are the result of retreating glaciers, which is accelerated by climate change.
Currently, a team is setting up early warning systems around 6 high-risk lakes in Sikkim, where a flood claimed 77 lives in October 2023.
To tackle this issue of spam calls and messages, Indian telecom companies have blocked over 50 organizations and disconnected more than 275,000 mobile numbers and telecom resources. Well, this action follows strict orders from the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, which last month directed all service providers to immediately halt all kinds of promotional voice calls from unregistered telemarketers. The regulator stated that these measures should greatly reduce spam calls and offer relief to consumers. Meanwhile, it has also warned that unregistered telemarketers found misusing telecom resources, they could face serious consequences, including up to 2 years of disconnection and also being blacklisted.
According to a report, a Chinese social media campaign is posing as U.S. voters to attack American politicians and spread divisive messages. The campaign is part of a broader Chinese state-linked effort known as Spamflage, which combines spam with targeted propaganda. Active since at least 2017, Spamflage has intensified its operations as the presidential election approaches. As per the report, the operation is using thousands of accounts across over 50 websites, forums, and social media platforms. Experts have said that Spamflage has become more aggressive in its attempts to influence U.S. political discourse. In one example, the campaign impersonated American anti-war activists on X, posting memes that called Trump a fraud and depicted him in an orange prison uniform while labeling Biden a coward. Now, the city of Karachi in Pakistan faces an acute shortage of water supply, meaning water is scarce and supply is inconsistent in a city with a population of over 20 million.
However, a new tech designed by a Karachi-based startup is giving hope to households and businesses across the city. The system, devised by Asani.io, is providing hope for many families and businesses across the city. The startup has made a system which attaches sensors inside the water mains and connects them to automated systems in houses and businesses. Well, as per Karachi Water Board, the supply of water falls almost 50% short of demand. Karachi gets most of its water from Indus River and the Hub Dam, while demand, it sits at around 4,000 million litres. The city gets only 2,460 million litres of water per day.
The new system helps reduce water wastage, optimizes utility and improves the overall quality of the lives of the people. As Asani's automation system has enabled families to live more fulfilled and less stressed lives.
Our life has changed in a way where the time we previously spent waiting for water to come in the main line, there was no schedule, which was very disturbing for us. However, since we got the system installed, it automatically detects when the water is in the main line and starts filling up the tanks. We can now spend the same time doing other things. Our family life has also improved. We also got rid of that constant worry about if we're going to have water or not.
The system so far has been installed in 1,000 homes and new businesses. The team behind the startup has been busy planning domestic installations, readying the equipment, checking installation kits and drawing up last-minute plans.
The overall requirement is, if you talk about Karachi, it's 1,100 million gallons per day and 650 is max that is being provided. That's already a half of the shortfall. So there is no possible way that everybody is going to get water, right? So this way, people are wasting like their 2 or 3 hours on a daily basis just to get their water tanks filled. They have to call tankers, they have to maintain their suction pumps so that they can get the water from the supply line, because pressure is not being maintained by the supplier side. So that's how it creates a huge inequitability and the distribution errors.
Karachi, being the financial capital of Pakistan, was named as the least livable cities around the world by Global Livability Study, owing to water supplies as one of the main challenges.
In the Indian states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, houses have collapsed and been swept away by torrential downpours, while floods have disrupted road and rail traffic.
At least 30 people have lost their lives across the two states due to rain-related incidents. More than 47,000 individuals were moved to relief camps in both the states as well.
In Andhra Pradesh, Indian naval aircraft, flood relief teams and also diving teams from Eastern Naval Command at Visakhapatnam have been deployed to augment the humanitarian assistance. Not only that, the disaster relief efforts in the state as well.
4 helicopters and 1 Dornier aircraft have also been deployed to provide search and rescue cover. So far, 22 stranded personnel have been rescued and more than 1,000 kg of food was airdropped for stranded individuals. Furthermore, additional naval assets and rescue teams with associated gear are kept on standby to provide necessary assistance.
As per the Indian Met Department, the intensity of rain would lessen in both the states. This as the depression over East Vidarbha and Telangana advances northwestwards across these regions. It will then weaken into a low-pressure region during the following 24 hours.
Meanwhile, the Weather Department has issued a heavy rainfall alert for several regions across the country. It has warned of potential flooding and disruptions. Several states are expected to experience heavy to very heavy rainfall.
With isolated incidents of extremely heavy downpours in certain areas, the Konkan and Goa regions along with Gujarat are expected to experience heavy rainfall for the next 7 days. Meanwhile, in West Madhya Pradesh, Saurashtra and Kutch, heavy rainfall is predicted from September 3rd to September 7th.
The northeastern states including Assam, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram and Tripura are likely to experience heavy rainfall throughout the next 7 days. Arunachal Pradesh is expected to see heavy rain from the 3rd of September to the 6th. Let's now take a look at what's making news in the world of sport. Now, the Indian contingent scripted history at the Paris Paralympics by recording their best ever medal haul. The team surpassed its previous edition's tally of 19 medals on day 6 of the marquee event. In the men's javelin throw F46 final, Ajit Singh won silver while Sundar Singh Gurjar clinched bronze. Then in the men's high jump T63 final, 2 Indians were again on the podium. Sharad Kumar took silver while Mariyappan Thangavelu won bronze. Deepthi Jivanji won the bronze in the 400-meter T20 category as well. India now have 20 medals and can aim for a quarter century with 4 more days of competition left in the Paralympics.
American Taylor Fritz outplayed 4th seed Alexander Zverev to reach his maiden Grand Slam semi-final at the US Open. The 12th seed had lost all 4 of his previous quarter-final Grand Slam matches but held his nerve in front of a partisan crowd. Fritz claimed the first set in a tie-break, but Zverev bounced back to take the second set. The American seized back momentum in the 3rd set and closed out the match in a 4th set tie-break to win a 7-6, 3-6, 6-4, 7-6 triumph. The win keeps alive Fritz's bid to become the first American men's singles champion at Flushing.